Hi, if you're new to sewing, there's so many terms that you need to get used to. And one of the questions people ask is, well, what is the difference between my stitch line and my seam? Why are those different? So let me explain those to you. I am Kim. This is Quilt with Kim. You are very, very welcome. We are going to switch camera and get right onto it. So here we are with my little demo piece here. Now, if you have a look at this, we've got a line of stitching along here. So this, first and foremost, is your stitch line. If I hold that up closer to camera, you can see there. So that's my standard stitch line. This bit here, above it, where the sort of short edges are, that is my seam. Okay, so this is your stitch line, and this is my seam. So often patterns will ask you to make little notches into your seam or trim your seam, and this is the bit that they are talking about. So oftentimes we stitch a certain distance away. They will talk about a seam allowance. I'll cover that in just 1 second. They'll ask you to stitch a certain distance away from the edge, and then when you've finished, they'll say, now trim your seam or your seam allowance, and this is what they are talking about. So if we pretend this is the bit that we want to keep, this is our project, our item of clothing, or our piecing for our quilt or whatever, this is this bit. And then the short bit on the right is our seam. Now your seam allowance is the distance between your stitch line and the raw edge. So this edge here is your raw edge. So the difference between, or the distance between your stitch line here and the raw edge is your seam allowance. And a pattern will tell you what that seam allowance needs to be, and that's what you set on your machine. I've got another video that covers exactly how to set your seam allowance, because it really depends on what you're making and what the pattern requirements are as to what that seam allowance is. Standardly though, just to give you an idea, if you are doing piecing for quilting, you will be working with 1/4 inch or about 5-6 mils seam allowance. And if you are dressmaking or making clothes, or pretty much for everything else, it seems to be 5/8 inch or 15 mils seam allowance. Okay, so that's what they're talking about, is the distance between the stitch line and your raw edge. Okay, I hope that helps. I'll put the link to the other video about how to set the seam allowance on your machine just down below there, so go and have a look. But I hope that has helped you today. Please practice your sewing and have lots of fun. It's a great hobby, and I will see you again in a future video. Bye for now.